Right. We are live. Okay, so welcome everybody, and glad you're here with us tonight. We had a few difficulties with technology, of course. That happens quite often. But tonight we have our very special guest host with me, Christian B. Roper. Say hi. How you doing, Christian?
Hello, I am doing very well. Excited to be here.
Well, we're excited to have you. And as we were talking about the other day, Christian was on the first episode of Beyond Oak Island, and they went out and they did some searching, pirate treasure hunting, actually, and Christian's been involved in that quite a bit over the last couple of years. And if you don't mind, Christian, I basically just want to start off by giving us a little background about how you got started. Now, we know we watched the show, and we know you were working with your father when you were at a young age, but take us through that a little bit if you don't mind.
Yeah, um, both of my parents were divers, and so growing up in a dive centered family, you're kind of surrounded by all these treasure legends and treasure hunting and just all the stories of the ocean, sea monsters, everything. That captivated me as a kid, and um, my father, who was both of my parents were instructors, but my father was an instructor, and
Mm-hmm.
he would often teach um, in East Texas at a place called Athens Scuba Park. And I was about 7 years old, and he took me on one of these normal certification classes, and I would,
Mm-hmm.
just swim around the banks of wherever he was diving. But in the dive store at Athens Scuba Park, the owner, a guy named Cal Wilcher, who would later be featured in Beyond as well,
Mm-hmm. Yep, we remember
um,
seeing him.
he is a very seasoned treasure hunter, and in his dive store, he's got just shelves of everything he's found: coins, Spanish guns from ships, and all these incredible finds. And I was 7 years old, just staring at all these finds. And he mentioned in passing being very intrigued at this one story about pirate treasure in East Texas. And I would later come to find out that he was talking about the Hendrix Lake story.
Ah, okay, yeah.
Now, uh, Lafitte is kind of the big guy in Texas folklore when it comes to treasure stories. Texas is a wonderful place if you want to be a treasure hunter. We've got outlaws, we've got Spanish history, we've got pirates, um, just about everything. And Lafitte is very much at the center of that.
Mm-hmm.
And there are hundreds of local legends, and of course, not all can be related to Lafitte, but they all want to be. This is why you get these small town legends that
Mm-hmm.
end up snowballing, and all of a sudden, Lafitte died there, or Lafitte had a ship there,
Right, yeah.
and that was kind of what drew my attention as a kid. This guy, and the fact that he was one of those characters that he was definitely not capable of doing all of those stories or having as much as people believe that he said he
Right,
did,
yeah,
but
yeah.
he's exactly who you want to be attached to your story.
Mm-hmm. So Lafitte, now when you first were introduced to him, I mean, did that particular? I mean, I'm sure you heard about others, some of the other pirate stories that were going on. Obviously, you were just talking about that. But what kind of zeroed you in on Lafitte because he was in that area because it was around the southeast Texas area?
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't know much about Lafitte before I got into the Hendrix Lake research.
Okay.
Um, Now, you are taught a bit about Lafitte in Texas history in school growing up,
Oh, really?
um,
Wow.
but he's one of those characters where there's kind of, I like to imagine it like a Venn diagram, and one of those circles is everything we know he did,
Mm-hmm.
and then the second circle is everything that he's associated with that really there's no chance he ever did. But in the
Wow.
middle, there's this little cross section where some of these stories might actually have a little bit of truth to them.
Right.
Uh, I didn't know how much depth there was to Lafitte, and a lot of people. One of the coolest parts about appearing on the show is that a lot of people have reached out saying that this was their introduction to Lafitte, and he was definitely a pirate. That's basically the easiest way to describe him. But half of his uh, legend comes from New Orleans. The other half comes from Texas. He was considered a wartime hero in the Battle of New Orleans, and given a pardon. And then he double crosses the United States and attacks
Yeah.
another American ship, and they
Yeah, I
force
guess.
him west.
Yeah, they were saying on the show that they accidentally attacked an American ship. Now that would have been probably one of his crew, one of his other ships, because he had quite a few different ships, right?
Yeah, absolutely. He had
Mm-hmm.
a colony of pirates working under him. Like I said in the show, a lot of these guys had no allegiance
Right. Yep.
other than to the sea.
Yep.
They the funny story is that a lot of these guys were, I mean, just lowly pirates,
Right.
but they were so well adept at navigating the waterways around New Orleans that the
Right.
U.S. saw them as a dire need for
Mm.
protecting the city of New Orleans. And
Right.
another fun fact about that battle, specifically about the waterways, is that the U.S. actually looked into importing hippos as a deterrent.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's
Yes,
interesting.
that's did not
I
happen,
had
but
not
that's one
heard
of
that
the things that they
before.
looked into.
Yeah, interesting. Now, was he also and you may have mentioned this, but was he also involved? I thought was in slave trading. Was that true?
Yes,
Oh
yes,
wow.
that was. I would say that is where that is the most history that we know about him.
Okay.
Was his involvement in goods smuggling and slave trading.
Ah wow.
And a lot of people say he was the first kind of slimy businessman in the state of Texas. Um, it was Spanish Texas at the time.
Right.
He
Yep.
was in Texas from about, officially, he was in Galveston, or before it was Galveston, it was Campeche, the pirate colony. And he was
Ah,
there
okay.
from about 1817 to 1821. These pirates,
Okay.
they're eh, eh, their piracy is often short-lived, and even though Lafitte spent about a decade as a very feared pirate, that was a long time for a
I was going
pirate.
to
You
say
look at
that's probably one of the
Blackbeard,
longest.
2
Yeah.
years, and he was. I would definitely consider him the last of the great pirates. There's a lot of people that say, "Oh, he was more of a privateer or a smuggler."
Mm-hmm.
He was engaged in piracy, um, and there's a wonderful kind of two-headed snake to Lafitte. There's a Lafitte of fact and the
Mm.
Lafitte of folklore.
Right.
And
Which would go along with most of your pirates out there, I would imagine. There's that
yeah,
mystique story that goes on and carries on, and then there's the actual,
mhm.
factual stuff.
And
Yeah.
I think he was a little bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there are articles out here out that talked about him killing an entire ship's crew. I
Oh,
don't think
really?
that was true, but
Yeah.
that
Right.
was part of what Lafitte sparked. That was the fear that he sparked in all of these Spanish
Mm-hmm.
sailors. And what he was known for, particularly, was slave trade.
Mm-hmm.
One of his largest sales was to the Bowie brothers of Texas
Completely.
independence fame.
Okay.
Um, there was one sale he made to the Bowie brothers, I believe, worth maybe $500,000.
Wow.
He was he was very well off. The colony was very well off, but of course, as a pirate, people tend to think that everything he was bringing in was just hordes of treasure and silver and
Mm-hmm.
gold. That's not
Yep.
the case.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, slave trade was the
Right.
moneymaker,
Right. Exactly. Yep.
and he was connected to a number of slave traders,
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of how he gets connected with Hendrix Lake, is through a smuggler. It's not Lafitte is a very um, distant character in the Hendrix Lake story. Lafitte is what gets people interested in. When you look into it, he has almost nothing to do with the lake. He was not there. He handed it off to a third party, and that third party ends up going down this trail, and it's lost. But
Right.
it is very much plausible when you look at Lafitte. There's in the town of Deweyville, there's
Mm-hmm.
still evidence of a lot of those slave barracks that
Oh,
they
really?
would bring slaves in
Oh, wow.
and sell them off. There was an area of Texas, and in between Texas and Louisiana, it was called either the Neutral Strip or No Man's Land, and it was the land that either France or Spain would not lay complete claim to.
Mm-hmm.
So it was um, really just the most welcome environment for anyone that wanted to engage in criminal activities, smuggling, any sort of uh, dark activity.
Right.
What he would do is he would often have men take ships upriver to slave markets like this.
Mm-hmm.
And if the ship was small enough, a lot of times they would scuttle it, sell everything valuable from it, sell all the goods from it,
Mm-hmm.
and then they would ditch the ship.
Wow.
So somewhere out there, a little bit further south in Texas, there are probably many ships belonging to Lafitte that could be found.
Right.
That's the real part of Lafitte's life. Whether there's these huge hoards of treasure that he
Yeah.
buried or
Exactly.
had his men bury, that's the question. But there is very much a pirate and discoverable part of that pirate that's
Mm-hmm.
out in the state of Texas right now.
Right. And that's something that, and we saw that on the show. And that's something that
Mhm.
I adhered to as well. Yeah, it'd be great to go out and find this hoard of treasure or any treasure at all, as a matter of fact. That'd be great. But to be able to get the story and really understand the entire story, all that history is what's really important. And like you had mentioned on the show,
Mhm.
not so much of that story has actually been documented. And so the work that you're doing is trying to put together the actual facts of his life and everything that happened between, while he was doing the slave trading and working around the New Orleans area. And then, being asked, I guess he was asked to leave that. So he headed over to Galveston and started doing his work over there. And that's when he, they ended up attacking an American ship and then having the Enterprise come in and say, hey, you got to go. So
Mhm.
obviously at that point, you want to get all that history down. That's really the important thing, and that's the way Rick Lagina is. He's very much on the getting who, what, why, where, and where. And you had mentioned that too in the story, which really, that really makes me happy to know and to have you on the show tonight because you are passionate about that history as well, and that's really, really what is important. Yes, like I said, it's great to find a hoard of cash and silver bars or whatever, but linking that history together and getting it as accurate as you possibly can based upon the records of the day. So that's really makes a whole lot of difference, and that's why I admire you about that. And I know Rick did too, because you could tell that he was very interested in what you had to say. Um, and folks, I had we had some technical difficulties tonight, and I had a bunch of pictures all ready to go. And again, same thing with last week. I had all these pictures ready to go, and for whatever reason, we ended up having to switch the programs that I'm using, and now I don't have all these pictures available for us. But so like we heard a lot about Lafitte in the show, and I'm hoping that most of that was done by Prometheus. And they talked about the whole thing about the War of 1812, where they went out and they wanted to the British actually wanted to buy, I think it was the British wanted to buy his fleet or talk him into working with them, and then he kind of pretended he was going to, but his allegiance was really to America and the founding, the starting of America. So he kind of led them to believe he would, but then he didn't. So most of that you think is pretty accurate, what they were showing on the show, not the things you were talking about, but the things that the actual show was talking about Lafitte. Was most of that
Yeah,
pretty accurate? Okay,
I, there are records out there. I would say there's no record about Lafitte that is 100% agreed on, even by the
that makes sense. Yeah.
most uh, academic of historians. There's a lot of 50-50. I'm great friends with a few members of the Lafitte Society in Texas, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of them are completely 50-50 on where he
Yeah.
was born, what happened to him when he
Yep.
died. One thing I'm working on right now is trying to get another pitch together for a future show, based on some information we have about what the heck happens to him after he leaves Galveston.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask you about too, because he went to Galveston. He was told you got to get out of here, but then the story ends, right? Or is it?
There are a few records that come out after that,
Mm-hmm.
and just fitting with the Lafitte character, you've got all these death reports, and then some of those are fake. And
Mm-hmm.
when you think about it, he's really the only pirate where, if he was killed, the party that killed him did not brag about it. You've got stories about Blackbeard's head being towed in front of a
Right.
ship, and it was
Yep.
a big celebration, and all these pirates that were killed by hanging, and it was a
Hmm.
big celebration to get a pirate. So
Yep.
if he did pass away in a battle, which there is a record of him trying to take on two ships and then getting wounded in a battle,
Hmm.
then they didn't necessarily brag about it. There's a lot of records, specifically in potentially Mexico City and Havana, that have not yet been gone through.
Oh, wow.
That could lead to a lot of um, solved questions about his life.
Hmm.
London, I've been told that London had all the um, insurance records for all the ships. So
Oh,
if
wow.
ships were taken,
Wow.
they would be insured. And we've got records of all the men that worked under him and all the ships, but it's incomplete. There's a great packet that I have, and it's many pages long. And I actually brought it and showed the Laginas when I was in the war room.
Hmm.
And it's all these ships. And it was written by, in 1834, it was written by Eugene Lafitte, which was a relative of
Ah, okay.
Jean Lafitte's.
Hmm.
And it was a decade or more after he was actually active, and they started making a unified record of all these ships. And at the end of
Right.
it, he says, there's more, but this is all I'm going to write for now.
Ah,
So
interesting.
it's just funny that we know there's more out there, but there
Yep.
are these pages and pages of Spanish ships that you can go through and see exactly what he took, when they were made,
Hmm.
who they belonged to. But we don't really know what happens to him. It's believed that he may have gotten sick. Um, I do believe he likely tried to establish a third pirate colony in Isla Mujeres, Mexico.
Oh, wow.
And I believe that most likely failed pretty quickly. The Spanish wealth traveling through was drying up as
Mm.
Mexico would win independence from Spain in 1821.
Right.
And I think that's when all the shipping dried up and life as a pirate was no longer what it used to be.
Right. Yeah, I can imagine.
But there's also um, the journal. It's been highly controversial, and not a lot of people know about it. But there is a supposed journal that was found by
Really?
a man claiming to be a relative. Now, a lot of people are 50-50 on this,
Hmm.
and there's a lot of things that historians point to that say maybe disqualify it as being 100% factual, but it's generally agreed that it was written with real um, historical documents. They
Hmm.
had real records to go off of as they were putting this journal together if it is a hoax. But it says he lives out the rest of his life in Illinois
Hmm.
under an assumed name. And it's just fun to think about.
Yeah, it is. It is.
I have no problem with people believing something that's completely wrong if that's who Lafitte is to them.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of true. Yeah. Now, you talked about some of these records that are being kept, and even the ones over in London. Do you think there's maybe a trip in line for you to go to London and see if you can get access to these?
I hope so. There's just so much out there. There's even the state of Texas. When we were looking through trying to get Spanish military records,
Hmm.
we made contact, and they said, "Well, we've got records from that time, but we're at about 1% translated."
Oh, wow.
And so it will probably, you can put in a request, and most of our requests are for families trying to figure out their family tree.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
But it may be years before we can actually get into looking into
Wow.
this. And so when you don't have a big budget or a TV show that can put you to the front of the queue,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
it's a little difficult, but it's been so much fun
Yeah.
tracking down all these things. A lot of the historians have been shocked. I'm 24 years old, and I'm just asking for all these historical records, and they're like, man, what are
Mhm.
you doing? Like,
Yeah. You're the guy that wants to put the story together. That is so
absolutely.
cool. Yeah, that's so cool. And I'm glad you are, because and that's what intrigued me when I saw the show. When the show that you were on, and I never even heard of Lafitte before, never even heard of him, and you brought that to light. And now with the possibility of learning more about this guy and everything that he did, and the number of ships that he had and everything, it's fascinating. It truly is. And I learned so much by watching that, and that's why I wanted to get you on the show, because you can come and talk to us and talk to all the members in the group here and stuff, and explain all these things to us. So let's jump back a little bit. So how let's talk about, everybody loves to hear some of the inside, especially me, some of the inside stuff about, how you got to be on the show, what was Rick and
Hmm.
Marty really like, and Maddie Blake, and all this kind of stuff. So take us back to the beginning of this, and how did this process begin to where you were connected with the show?
So in 2018, by some strange string of events, uh, a friend and I were watching the Expedition Unknown show,
Mm-hmm.
and it was about Lafitte. And
Oh wow.
I had kept the Lafitte story about Hendrix Lake in my mind ever since I was 7 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I had just graduated college, and I was talking to a friend, and we are watching this episode. I said, "Have you ever heard about the story in Tatum that's supposedly related to Lafitte?"
Mm-hmm.
Never looked into it. Never tried to look into records or anything. But
Mm-hmm.
he said, "I've kind of heard of it." And from there, we start a Google search, and our Google search leads us to a magazine, and that magazine leads us to a newspaper article, and that newspaper article leads us to maybe a daughter of someone who actually searched.
Mm-hmm.
And so this story, separate from the treasure, started to unfold about this strange web of treasure hunters and locals
Mm-hmm.
that were searching this lake for pirate treasure in the 50s and 60s.
Oh wow.
And we said, "Oh man, this would be the coolest YouTube series."
Mm-hmm.
And that was the original plan for what we have been doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got into a little bit deeper research, and we found out that the ship existed that is mentioned in the legend. Um, there's no treasure mentioned on board, but the ship existed in the right year, and so we said, "Oh, that's pretty interesting." And
Mm-hmm.
then they had tried all this strange stuff at the lake. They had built up cranes and dynamited the bottom,
Oh
and they
really?
had even, one of the funny ties with the lake is that they had tried to get Gene Dixon, who was the world's most famous psychic at the time, to the lake.
To
They
see
had
if you
tried
could pick up
absolutely
on
everything.
something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. They were
And so,
grasping at all straws that they could to get an answer to this.
yeah, he and I said, "Yeah, this would be a really cool film." And so we put this out into the universe. We said,
Mm-hmm.
"We want to make an independent documentary about this lake
That's so
and what
cool.
happened there."
Yep.
And Lafitte is the draw, but we say somewhere along the way we might disprove it, or say it could be based on something else.
Right.
We are just obsessed with this story that's happening in the past. And of course, the Hendrix Lake story is completely dependent on an early Texas trail known as Tramel's Trace. Now, there are a number of treasure legends associated with Tramel's Trace. There was a newspaper article in 1899, I think, of a man traveling the country and seeing Tramel's Trace, and he said all along it there were holes dug on either side because they
Wow.
believed that some treasure was hidden. And
Interesting.
this Hendrix Lake story talks about Lafitte stealing these silver ingots from a ship called the Santa Rosa, giving it to a smuggler named Nicholas Trammell. And Trammell got a smuggling party together to take this silver to St. Louis. Now, the legend differs on why it was being taken to St. Louis. I've
Mm-hmm.
heard that was the easiest place for it to be made into American currency. That was the easiest place for it to be hidden.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard it was being sent to his brother for safekeeping. That's the part of folklore that's always um, up for interpretation.
Yep. Yep.
And it depended on this trace. And so we found out that there was a guy named Gary Pinkerton who had written a book about Tramel's Trace. And he's a wonderful independent researcher, one of the best historians I've ever met. And he
Really.
doesn't get a lot of credit for it, but he digs up stuff that I don't know how he dug up. Uh, and he wrote this wonderful, independently written book about just the history of Tramel's Trace.
Wow.
And Trammell was a known smuggler. His nickname was Hot Horse because he was associated with stealing horses from the Cherokee in East Texas.
Wow.
And he got associated with Lafitte. And a lot of the folklore will refer to him as a pirate
Right.
or associate of a pirate. Well, there's no definitive record showing that. He was just a character that kind of fits with the story.
Mm-hmm.
And we contact Gary and say, hey, have you ever heard about the Hendrix Lake story? We are just two guys. We want to make this film about it.
Mm-hmm.
We're really hope we don't care if you completely disprove it, disbelieve. Um, you just know a lot about the trace that's associated with it. Could we interview you? And we are really interested in making this book or making this movie about um, the legend that's associated with this trail in this
Right.
book.
Mm-hmm.
And he emails back immediately and he said, this is the funniest thing. I am writing a book about the history of Hendrix Lake right now.
Oh, wow.
And so some supernatural force really wanted the story
Yeah,
of the history of Hendrix Lake to
apparently.
be told.
Yeah.
And we meet him at a barbecue restaurant in the town over. And we show him all this research. And we've got all the articles about the lake. And we've got,
Mm-hmm.
100 pages worth of stuff typed up and said, this is what we want to do. And he's like, man, this is just bittersweet. And he had been tracking down people that had searched the lake in the past
Okay. Yeah.
and writing all these family stories of searches at the lake, all the near-death experiences, and
Wow.
the stories about all the nasty creatures and snakes in the trees, and just the strange history that this lake has.
Right.
And we were like, we're completely sold. And he had so many connections for us that helped us out in doing that so much. So in just a few months of announcing this, we had connection with someone that had done all this research. We had, connections to the lake itself.
Mm-hmm.
We had gotten much further than I thought we would. And his book, by the way, is called True Believers, Treasure Hunters at Hendrix Lake. And True
Oh, wow.
Believers is a reference to those who will not ever give it up, no matter if you find a million ways to disprove it, they'll still think there's pirate treasure in the lake. And there
Mm-hmm.
were people like that throughout all the history of the searches at Hendrix Lake. And immediately when we announced it, there was an LA studio that contacted us and said, we're actually looking for a competitor to The Curse of Oak Island.
Well, wow.
Do you think we could buy this out? Or do you think at least have discussions
Mm-hmm.
and potentially produce this as a television show? Well, I had known enough about the lake at that point that I had politely declined, just to ultimately have control. And it's not my property. It's not, I was in no place to say, yeah, let's go ahead with this.
You're right.
But the story was there, and they were very interested. And I said, potentially in the future, I can have something ready for you. And it was just funny that Oak Island ends up coming around, and I'm not competing with them, but I'm helping them out.
Mm-hmm.
But I just wanted control over that. This was my first film. I wanted to take it from start to finish. I did
Right.
not want to sell out in that way.
Right.
But
And plus,
as we were
having other
going
people come
along-
in and change the way you want to do it. It's like, no, this is the way I want to get this
Yeah.
done, and they're going to come in and change everything. And yeah, I understand it completely.
Absolutely. Part of the reason we were even given access to the lake was because we were such a small crew,
Mm-hmm.
and we were not trying to exploit in any way. We were not coming in saying, hey, we're going to find treasure. It was, let's document this place, talk about what happened at the past, and see if we can't just give it a new direction in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was contacted about maybe January. I think through there's a member of the LaFitte Society that is in our film, and the fun part about his story is that he had these recurring nightmares as a child about being thrown into a tow sack and being forced into piracy. And he's had strange visions throughout his life that have led him to get into past life regressions, looking into the idea of either DNA memory or reincarnation of LaFitte. And so he had this paranormal tie, but wonderful historian, and he was originally contacted for the show to talk about Lafitte in a historical way, and he knew that we were actually searching, and so I think he referred us to them. And when it began, I was assuming that I would be in the show for about 30 seconds. I They were very vague at first, and they said, we're making a show, History Channel, about great treasures and the people behind them.
Mm-hmm.
Did not know it was associated with Oak Island. Did not know anything. I said, yeah, well, can't guarantee you'll find anything, but at least in the past, people associated this lake with John Lafitte. It's very
Right.
much part of the Lafitte story. And then the lockdowns hit. Did not think the show was going to be made, and
Right.
pretty much out of nowhere, I get another call. It says, "Hey, how soon can you get on a plane?" And things just kind of developed from
Yeah.
there.
Right.
Kevin Burns called me on the phone and said,
Wow.
"We know you know a lot about Lafitte, but can you talk about a couple other pirates as well?" And I was like, "Oh man, it would be such an honor. That's everyone's
Yeah.
dream, to just
Oh,
go
yeah.
on TV and talk about pirates." And
Mm-hmm.
it was just a fun snowballing event
Oh, I bet.
to get on TV in front of that many people. But
Right.
I don't know if I can exactly explain how that happened, other than in some sort of search we had popped up, and then we were
Isn't
referred
that
to by a
something?
member of
That's
the
so
Lafitte
cool.
Society, and it's a crazy story.
Right. So what was your experience like when you got okay, you got the plane, they want you to fly out right away. So you hop on a
Hmm.
plane and you fly to, I'm assuming, Halifax. Did you come into
Um,
Halifax? Is that what you did?
but yeah, I won't comment on anything just because they don't want me to. I won't
Okay.
comment on anything
That's fine.
involving that trip.
Okay. All right, cool. I understand that completely. So
No, that's fine.
what was your impression of Rick and Marty and that whole thing?
Wonderful. Um, Loved Maddie Blake. I
Hmm.
bonded with Maddie Blake like no other.
He seems like a great
And
guy. He really does.
I knew who he was. I knew he was and on the show. I had seen him a few times on TV.
Hmm.
And going into this, I was not, after being added to these Facebook groups, now I know what an Oak Island super fan is. I was nowhere near a super fan, but I occasionally recognized some people here and there. I was a fan of the show in its
Hmm.
early seasons, and it was just so funny going full circle and appearing on the show. But Maddie was so great. I knew who he was, and when I met him at the airport, I tried to look up on his IMDb like the most obscure thing that he was ever in,
Yeah.
and claimed that I recognized him from that and not the show. And so I joked with him when I met. I was like, "Oh yeah, Matty Blake from the Progresso commercial." And he just thought that was the funniest thing.
Ah, that's hilarious. I never knew he
But the
was in a
Laginas were
Progressive
great.
commercial.
Yeah, the
That's hilarious.
Laginas were great. Um, a lot of people, they're celebrities to them, and I was kind of in that same mindset when I met them.
Yep.
I would say they're the maybe two most recognizable treasure hunters on Earth,
Yeah, now they are. Yeah.
and
Yep.
just to be able to, tell friends and family that I was around the two most treasure hunters on Earth,
Yeah.
even if it was uh, for a few short hours.
Hmm.
Um, Wonderful. Uh, Marty's the skeptical one in the group, and
Yep.
Rick's the one that wants to research and do everything. I loved my time around them. Uh, Rick and I bonded really well,
Hmm.
and I think that's part of the reason the show liked my story and the Hendrix Lake story so well, was because I heard it as a kid,
Right.
and I say it in the show. It's just like Rick's Reader's Digest moment, where
Exactly. Exactly.
he's
Yep.
captivated with this story as a kid, and I think a lot
Yep.
of people involved in treasure hunting, involved in
Hmm.
this group, heard a story as a kid, and they just never chose to grow up, and so they're still following these treasure stories, and it's a fun part of life. I think stories are what unites people,
Yep.
and that was what Rick and I bonded over. His treasure is a lot more valuable that he's looking after, but he was very helpful and
Potentially.
providing a lot of insight, and even
Hmm.
outside the show. I mean, of course, it's a show, and in terms of that episode, they want to
Hmm.
give back to a treasure hunter. But when we were not filming, he was just wonderful and nice, and asking so many questions and offering help outside of the show. And it was fun to be around him
I bet.
and Marty and Maddie. And I got to interact with Gary Drayton for a little bit.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. He seems
Yeah.
like he'd be a hilarious guy. I don't know. He just seems like he's really
He,
funny to be around. I don't know. I get that impression from just watching on the
yeah,
show.
I hate that the cameras cannot pick up everything he says.
Oh, really?
He's the funniest person I've ever been around.
You get that impression, you really do. And like you said about Rick and Marty, and that's something that I've talked about many times on the show, is that they seem so genuine, and they
Mhm.
seem like they are people of integrity. So that, because some people say, oh, that kind of stuff out there is fake, and they probably dropped that, like the cross that they found in Smith's Cove, and they're like, oh, somebody probably planted it there so they could say, oh, look what we found it. And I'm thinking, no, I really do not believe that. I believe that you watch these two guys, and you've watched them now. For me, I'm going, obviously in our 7th season or 8th season, watching these guys, and you get a sense that you know them. I don't believe the show's scripted, and I don't believe that they're gonna plant something to be found. I believe that they're people of integrity, and it sounds like you believe that as well, from actually meeting them.
Yeah, I was worried. Of course, reality TV, you don't know what to expect.
Exactly.
But my experience with Prometheus, all the producers and Laginas, it was very genuine.
Mm-hmm.
It was let it roll, and all the show is made in the editing room. They let everything happen, and
That's great.
I was very worried that they would want to stage something or
Yep.
make it something that it's not. But it was not that. It was done in a very good way. I don't mean this in a negative way at all, but I think the Laginas would still be doing what they're doing outside of the TV show. I don't think the TV show means anything to them. I think they love the support,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, it's like they're just genuine enough to where they would be doing what they're passionate about outside of the show, outside of all the fame, outside of everything that the show brings. And it was, like I said, just wonderful being around them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get that impression too, and I would love to meet him someday, and who knows, maybe I'll get that opportunity. I know we have some, in our group here, we have some of the cast members are members of our group, and that's really cool. And I've been talking to Tony Sampson about going out to, and I actually am planning on going out to taking one of Tony's, probably in July of next year, taking one of Tony's cruises. He's got his sea tours going on, and taking one of his cruises around, and then after that, we're going over to the Mug and Anchor, and we're gonna have a pint, and I'm gonna do a live show from the Mug and Anchor if we can work all this out. So and just to get a chance to be there. I've never been there, and you talk about the super fans. I'm pretty close to being a super fan. I love the show, and I love the story. And that, again, going back to that, like I mentioned before, I love the story that's going on, even if they don't dig up the Ark of the Covenant down there or whatever, just to get the answers to that story is I want to know who was there. And I believe that there was many different groups of people that were there. But anyway, we'll talk about Oak Island a little bit after we finish this. But one thing, okay, so now take us back to the lake. Now, we saw on the show that you got to go out to the lake with Maddie, and I seen in it, was it Gary Pinkerton in the back of the vehicle riding with you out there to the lake? Is that Pinkerton?
Yes.
His first name is Gary,
Yes.
you said?
Gary Pinkerton.
Okay, good. And so I'd love to talk to him sometime too, because now that you've talked about the fact that he's such a strong historian and all this, I'd love to. Maybe we'll have to have you both come back on here sometime, and we'll have you both on the show. But I'd love to talk to him. So take us back to the lake. Okay, so you're out to the lake with Maddie Blake and Gary, and you come out there and you met up with Cal that you've known for many years, right? Is that correct?
I knew him when I was young, and we had reintroduced ourselves in the summer of 2019 when we filmed his interview for our documentary.
Okay, all right. So now you're out at the lake, and I'm assuming that the Laginas are helping you out a little bit with some of this. But you get out to the lake and you guys are going to go out and do your scanning and all that. So take us through that whole. And I'm sure, like, and again, because it's a TV show, I mean, you guys were out there, I'm assuming, all day long until the storm came, but we get to see only bits and pieces of this. So take us through the whole lake thing, if you can, what you're allowed to say, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Um, well, we were filming during one of the, I guess, rainiest days I've ever seen. It was where, they were looking on radar and they said, "Oh, this looks like a slight break in the clouds. We might be good for an hour."
Oh boy.
And so we jet out to the end of the lake, try to do something, get back. And of course, they chose that day to try to get in the water. Um, but it was fun. I think what got me was adding our names to the long list of people that have attempted stuff at the lake.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, because you said it had been going on for years, and that's something I didn't know. Now, is the lake privately owned? Is that on private property?
it is privately owned,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very well, I guess, guarded and very sparsely used.
Mm-hmm.
And it had not been touched by treasure hunters in maybe 50 years, at least
Right.
by major searches, until we decided to do something out there. And prior to the show, all that we had done was do magnet fishing in a few spots where we knew there were search attempts in the past. We really wanted to bring up some sort of tool or something that was used in a past search and just show it in the documentary.
Right. Something could
And
be dated that far back. Yeah.
picked up a couple things, but other than that, we had never really thought about actually giving it an attempt to see what's in the lake.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much history in the lake, which was part of why I was so excited about doing a search with the show. Not necessarily, finding this hoard of treasure, but there's 200 years of history along
Mm-hmm.
that side of the lake. A lot of the earliest settlers to come to Texas, like Gary mentions in his first Trammels Trace book, were crossing right by the lake. And so a
Mm-hmm.
lot of those original settlers came that way, and it's like we have no clue what we're going to find.
Mm-hmm.
There's rumors also of the Texas Army and the Mexican Army being in this area from
Oh
about
wow.
the 1830s,
Mm-hmm.
and the lake it was also home to a Caddo settlement, and there's jewelry and pottery that can be
What
found
settlement was
on
that? What was that?
Caddo.
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 I don't know
It's
what that is.
the Caddo tribe.
Oh, okay. All right. Native
Yeah,
Americans. Yeah. Wow.
and so much history is there that can be pulled up, and there were uh, early 1900s sawmills there. So much equipment that can be pulled up, and it hadn't been touched in 50 years. And I was thinking there's no clue about what exactly we can, just dig out of this lake.
Mm-hmm.
And it's primarily associated with Lafitte. Why Lafitte stuck and not a couple of the other stories associated with the lake, I don't know.
Hmm.
But the lake is also associated with stories of a lost hoard of gold that the Mexican army had as they were
Oh,
trying to
really?
escape the Texas army.
Oh,
Mhm.
wow.
And there were at times arguments among treasure hunters who were at the lake at the same time, arguing over what exactly they would even be looking for.
Wow.
The story, the main branch of the story changes at different points,
Right.
but the overwhelmingly popular story about Hendrix Lake was about Jean Lafitte and these
Mhm.
wagons of silver.
Right.
So I said, if we pull up something different, if we pull up anything, uh, at least that's a little bit closer to an answer in the story.
Right.
It means as much to me to pull up maybe something that immediately debunks everything, but says this is exactly how that story started. Stories like this can easily begin
Right.
with
Right.
something of value being lost, and
Mm-hmm.
then over time, names get added, dates get added,
Yep.
and it develops into this huge story.
Right.
So I didn't know what to expect from this dive. We were the first people to ever search via sonar.
Yeah, that was really
Uh,
cool.
First people to dive in 50 years. It's a rough dive. Um, the visibility looked somewhat decent. I think Alex could see his hand on the video in the episode, but in our last dives, absolutely no visibility. At times it's pitch black. The first time I went down to dive, it was about 13 feet, and I knew my knees were in the mud, but it was pitch black, and I could not tell if my mask was in the mud or not.
Oh,
It was
wow.
that dark, and so I
Wow.
had to feel in front of me. You're just feeling my hands, hoping to not run into
That's got to be incredible. I can't
any
imagine doing
sort
it.
of creature that can be down there.
Yeah.
Most are scared away by the bubbles, but we found out that gar are not. But luckily, the gar are friendly.
Are they really?
On my last dive, yeah. One thing that happened on my last dive was that I got bumped in my shoulder by something fleshy, and I've got gloves on and I've got a thick suit on, so I didn't have the greatest feel, and it bumps into my shoulder.
Oh,
Can't see anything, and I immediately think that this is the other diver's leg, and I didn't want to get kicked in the face. I thought there would be a kick coming. I thought he didn't know I was there, so I try to lock it in my arms really fast, and I try to hug this leg, and as I reach around it, I go all the way around. I can feel the entire diameter, and I'm like, why isn't Alex moving? And I've got it wrapped tight, and I thought my arm was wrapped around his thigh for about a second, and I'm like, why is he not moving? And then slowly it just slithers out, and then about a few seconds later, I just realized I hugged what might have been about a 5 or 6 foot gar.
Oh my God.
Just right there.
Oh man, how many of you people could handle it? I'd have been out of the water. I'm like, I'm out, gone. See you, bye.
Fish will take nibbles at your fingers if you stop moving your fingers for a second. But we haven't had problems with anything. Yeah. It's it looked like a very dangerous dive on TV, but that's what East Texas diving is, and that's what we're all trained in.
Yeah,
doing.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I went diving once, and I have, with an instructor, went out and we actually dove in a bay instead of in a pool or something where you're supposed to learn. I was in a foreign country, by the way, and that's why they just let you, hey, we'll suit you up and we'll jump in there. We're within a guide, and he'll show you around. And it was awesome, and I could see down there and everything. But I cannot imagine. First of all, you can't see. Second of all, there's creatures around there, and I did a little thing I put on the members page a little bit earlier today, and it was a picture. I had taken a picture of Matty Blake in the vehicle when you were telling him about all these creatures, and then he was like, closing his eyes and cringing. I took that picture and I said, the face you make when you're about to go someplace where there's potentially creatures that can kill you, and so that's how I would feel. I mean, to be in the pitch dark and not even know for sure. You can't see your hand in front of the face. And one of the photographs I had was a picture of the guy that was diving down there. I believe it was Cal's son. Was that correct? That actually
Alex,
had Alex. Yes, thank you. And he had a piece of wood or something that he brought up. And in one of the pictures, the camera can see it, but I'm thinking he probably can't really tell what it is he's got in his hands.
Yeah, I've done some lake diving before to where I can't see out of my mask, so I will look through my GoPro. The GoPro has better visibility for whatever reason, and so I will look through my GoPro if I'm trying to grab something. It's
got a little bit better clarity. Yeah, wow. Yeah, I'm looking over at the chat over here on the screen and looking at some of the people that are talking. No way, it's crazy, nuts. People are like, yeah, they're not gonna. Yeah, they wouldn't do that for nothing in the world. I mean, I love diving and it's awesome, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, one thing that got lost in the editing of the episode, at least I didn't catch it when I watched the episode, but as they say, they recommend Maddie to go to the lake, and I said, great, I don't care who comes as long as you're not afraid of snakes. I explained that water moccasins were the #1 thing to be concerned about at the lake, and my father teaches wilderness first aid, and so he's got me very well trained. I've seen his first aid speeches a million times, and I can tell you everything about what can hurt you in this area. And we've got all 4 types of venomous snakes that can be found in Texas, pretty much in the general area of the lake. But I was telling them about moccasins and how moccasins will tend to bite and chew, and a lot of the times when people go to the hospital with bites from moccasins, the snake will still be attached
Oh,
when chewing.
really? Oh my gosh.
And when the Laginas heard that, they they were freaked out.
Yeah, that's what Bonnie is saying.
So
Bonnie's like, snakes? Hell no. Yeah, that's
yeah,
what I don't mind snakes. I like snakes. If I know where they're at and I can watch them from a little bit of a distance, I'm fascinated by snakes. But it's when you see that snake and then all of a sudden he's gone and you're like, all right, where did he go? He's around here someplace.
mhm.
That would freak me out, especially like you said, diving in the water. And doing that sort of thing and not being able to see. But that's an incredible story. You're actually holding on to what you thought was somebody's thigh, and you didn't want to get kicked by it, and it turns out it's actually a gar. But yeah, to think that they're friendly, okay, maybe not all that scared of you, but I don't know about friendly. Oof, that's got to be
Yeah,
incredible.
there will be things bump your tank, and you just kind of
Yeah,
assume it's a big one. I don't think they can see you very well either.
right. That's an amazing story. So what can you now? I know that obviously you're under an NDA, and there is a possibility, I suppose, of you going back out and maybe doing a little bit more. But I mean, can you? We left the show. The diver went down. Alex went down. He came up with that piece of wood, and you guys, there was something clearly. You put the buoy down, the marker down to mark that spot. Can you talk about, has anybody gone back? I mean, and he came up out of the water, Alex did, and he said, yeah, it's about this big, and he was showing his arms out and talking about something circular. Can you talk about has anybody been back? Is that something you could talk about?
Yeah, we've been back. We've been back filming with my documentary
Okay.
and trying to get answers. So we were doing almost the same thing. We were trying to get sonar scans done at the lake.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, Prometheus wanted to come out, and so we've kind of filmed simultaneously, and it was wonderful when they were out because I didn't have much responsibility. Just go look for treasure is what they said.
All right.
And we've been back out. We've recovered a bit. I'll be a little bit vague about
That's
what we
fine.
found.
That's fine.
Number
I
one,
understand.
because I don't know exactly how to explain what we found.
Oh, really?
We found some old things. We're trying to meet with a few experts right now, trying to get a few things identified.
Nice.
Is there the pirate silver right there that the story talks about? No, I don't believe so. But could that spot be the number one clue to saying this is exactly what sparked the story?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. There's some sort of something that we found right there.
Mm-hmm.
We've been back. We've dug out artifacts. Almost none of it is recoverable, specifically because it is covered in logs and 2 to 5 feet underneath the bottom of the mud.
Oh, yeah, and that's got to be
Or
something
underneath
too.
the lake bottom.
Right, yeah,
You've
mucky
got to
lake
dig
bottom.
that out. I got really lucky in finding a piece that we were lucky enough to get it on film for the documentary, but I was just feeling by hand. Most of what we've found down there is not even with the detector. The
Wow.
detector is almost a hindrance at this point because that's extra room that you're taking up and you can't navigate around the logs and everything.
Right. So it becomes a hand search, just feeling around down there in the
Yeah,
dark where you
yeah.
can't see. Oh my gosh.
You feel with hands, you feel kind of with fists just in case you bump into a snapping turtle.
Snapping
you
turtle.
don't
I
wanna
hadn't
lose-
said anything about snapping turtles. Oh,
You don't want
And they
to
can
lose
get
any
big.
fingers. Oh yeah, there are 100+ pound snapping turtles in the lake that we routinely see
yeah.
at the surface.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I'm not going in there. I'll stay in the boat with Maddie.
But yeah, I was on my stomach and feeling around in not sure how deep, maybe 5 to 8 feet of water. Just feeling around. It's so nasty and there's no visibility. We couldn't even find what we were looking for on the sonar. The sonar shows something
Mm-hmm.
casting all these shadows, and so the first dive we were trying to find that target. And I just get lucky. I'm on my stomach. And I say, okay, I need to surface. I can't see my air gauge. Let me go check my air. So I try to push myself up onto my knees. And the mud is so soft that my forearms push into the mud. and both hands land directly on the solid object. And I said, okay, I just grabbed a tree stump and then I surface with it. And I'll be very vague on what it is. Another reason because I don't know, but there's all kinds of
Wow.
metal junk. There's probably 150 plus years of just stuff that went wrong and stuff people threw in, and we found quite a bit of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's an identifiable piece, we think, and so now we're working on trying to get that identified for a little bit more closure.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of bringing up a big hoard of pirate treasure, we're looking at a few other locations right now.
Okay.
Um,
And this is for your documentary,
the
right? Is what you're working on
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
And that's
Mm-hmm.
called Sunken Silver? Is that what the name of it is?
Sunken Silver.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, any idea when this might be coming out?
Hopefully spring 2021.
Oh, wow. That's
We
soon.
started filming summer 2019.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you
and
were
we
doing
only
some filming
expected
for
to
it today, right?
Film. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we only expected to film for a few short months and then get it out. And then one lead,
Yep.
develops into 6 more months of tracking something down. And we've had a great time tracking down historians and family members of past searchers. And we were fortunate, especially through the show, in being able to present a future for the lake. And that was, perhaps providing a little bit of clarity to what happened here. Myself, as well as Gary, would love this to be designated as perhaps a state park or a local park.
Yep.
There's so much history in that area. And hopefully 2021. What we're the majority of the interviews have been shot, and all the diving is done now. There is a little bit of, I guess, post-production that would add to it, and I'm working with a buddy from Argentina and getting it scored.
Oh, wow.
So it's developed into a very a much larger project than I would have expected it to.
Yep.
Yeah, we were able to interview Maddie Blake, and
Nice.
a lot of people have become aware of it.
Right.
And it might not be the most expensive project ever made. I think we've only spent a few $1,000s on it.
Oh.
And we've gotten in front of 2 million people now on the History Channel and been able to dig all this stuff up. And we think we might be able to repackage the Hendrix Lake legend in a completely new way.
Oh, wow.
That hands it off to the next generation and says, this is perhaps what this story is based on. Good luck, go find it. I think I'm done with pirates and alligator infested and snake infested lakes for a little bit, so I might pick a pirate in the Caribbean to go
There
look
you
after
go.
next.
There you go. There you go. Get out to the Caribbean. Yeah.
Yeah. It's our belief that there is a little bit of history underneath it that can be proven, and that the lake story may potentially be based on. But the lake got all the attention.
Right.
And there are other stories that deserve to be looked into.
And that's fantastic.
But it was awesome getting the lake in front of everyone. A lot of positive messages have come from it. I've loved when people reach out to me with their own LaFitte stories, or saying that LaFitte was introduced to them for the first time.
Right. Yeah.
I think if
like me,
through all that, we were able to inspire just one person to get into treasure hunting, or to at least kind of take their family stories seriously and say there's a lot of value in passing this on to the next generation,
right,
then I think it's a success on our end.
Absolutely. And you've definitely got my attention, and I know quite a few of us, there was quite a few people that were we've been talking about this leading up to tonight, knowing that we were having you on, and quite a few people have talked about the fact that they didn't know anything about LaFitte, or Southeast Texas for that matter, that there was a possibility of pirate pirates even being around that area. It makes sense, once you explain it, it makes total sense. But we really didn't have any idea. So that's fascinating. It really is. And you talk about people that would be inspired to be treasure hunters. I mean, most of us would love to do that. I mean, even just metal detecting. I mean, I got my metal detector back in the corner here, and I take it around and do some little stuff with it. And I found some interesting pieces, but nothing of any real significance. But a lot of the things I found do have a story to them, and that's just fascinating to me. But you're right. This has inspired a lot of people, and the fact that you have, brought this up about the lake and all that. It's just fascinating stuff. Though, yeah. Now we just saw. I think it was just not last night's episode, but maybe the week before last, where they were out in Florida, and they were talking with the diver out there and the trials that he went through with finding something, and then they're saying, oh, that belongs to the French or whatever, and now he can't even get back there. They can't recover it. They can't do anything, and Marty was just beside himself with frustration about the whole thing. So you may run into that if you do get out to the Caribbean. I mean, it's a whole world that we know nothing about. I mean, I grew up watching Jacques Cousteau, watching him going out and finding, stuff off the coast or wherever he happened to be. And it was fascinating to me as a kid growing up and watching that and thinking, man, that would be just a glamorous life to be able to do all that. But then when you find something like these guys did, and then you can't go back and get it and recover it and bring this history up, it's got to be very frustrating. So hopefully you don't run into that when you get out there. So all right, so I was trying to get some of the stuff that was going by, and I see Pat's asking a question. We were raised on local history about Lafitte. Oh, it's not a question, but just about Jean Lafitte. Pat was talking about that. So some people have heard. I never heard of Lafitte before. We always hear about like Blackbeard and there's another one that was being talked about on the show. Oh, the one that came up with that code, I guess, to find some treasure. What was his name?
Levasseur.
Yes, thank you.
Olivier Levasseur, yeah.
What an interesting story there. And then took a necklace off or something and wrapped it up and threw it out there and said, "Here's the key to finding the treasure. Whoever's the lucky one." So have you looked into that one at all?
I have not. I believe that his treasure, well, I believe he did stockpile, and I believe he might have one of the most valuable treasures ever. So Levasseur was capitalizing on a very wealthy shipping route. There's one story, I don't think they mentioned it in the show, but there was a Portuguese ship called Nostra Senhora do Cabo, and it was carrying about $400 million in religious artifacts.
Oh my goodness.
And they get hit by a storm, and they're off the coast of Madagascar Reunion Island area. And to stay afloat, they have to dump all of their cannons.
Oh, wow.
And after they dump all of the cannons and the storm clears, Levasseur shows up, and they lost everything.
Yeah,
and
they couldn't defend themselves now.
That was one of the biggest heists of any kind, probably in history.
Wow.
And most people believe he may have kept quite a bit in Seychelles, and there's been a few searches there. I think that would be a wonderful show in itself. You've got all the beach and nature out there, and then the draw of pirates. Somewhere, someone's going to find something pretty soon. There's just so many stories about burials and things like that. I tend to believe a lot of the stories of treasure burial and telling men to go out and bury stuff on the beach. I think that's quite a bit of fantasy. But there's real history mixed in a lot of that. There's shipwrecks. There's stuff that they lost transporting.
Right.
Along the way, there's stuff that could be found. For example, one thing about Lafitte is everything that he lost in the hurricane of 1818. There were millions of dollars in
Yeah.
coinage and ingots and ships that were completely destroyed in that hurricane. And somewhere off the coast of Galveston, it's just asking to be found.
Wow.
Now, with all the legal restrictions, will it ever be found? With all the, the issues of visibility and in stuff sinking,
Right.
I don't know, but it's somewhere out there. And so that's what excites me, is these real documented events that are out there. So much about Lafitte's life is, we know 80% of it, but we're not sure.
Right.
We know he did this, but we aren't sure in what way or how much that he owned. I think Treasure's beautiful in giving something for people to believe in.
Yeah.
Whether it's true or not, I would argue it doesn't matter. If you want to believe that there's
Exactly.
millions of dollars where you're searching, go ahead.
It's a great thing to it's a great thing to imagine for sure. I'm with you, on board with that. Pam Block says, didn't Lafitte help Andrew Jackson fight the War of 1812? And I believe that was brought up on the show, was it not?
Yeah, the Battle of New Orleans.
And that's the one where he ended up, I guess him and quite a few of his crew, I suppose, were very effective in helping, and he was given a pardon during that for his helping, and then, so that was really cool. So here he is. You got this guy who was a smuggler, or a slave trader, and all this kind of stuff going on, and and then he ends up helping, in the actual war that founded America, which is actually pretty cool. You think about that. That's actually pretty neat that he was able to do that. Tom Burns is asking, have you used LiDAR or satellite in your search at all?
We have not used either of those in the search. We are not planning on doing anything outside of the water to search for anything about the lake. We were very minimalistic in what we wanted to do in terms of the documentary. And when we got some very strange sonar hits, then we said, okay, let's go one more step and let's dive and let's get some pieces by hand. And that's the extent to what we've done.
All right. Folks that are giving us some questions here, I'm sorry I missed quite a few of them as they rolled by. If you have any more, please throw them up there now, even if you mentioned it before, because I missed quite a few of them. Let's see. Treasure could be... Bonnie is saying, treasure could be lots of money, but also what it teaches us on our own history. And exactly, that's kind of what we were talking about. The history is, and the whole thing about pirates always get this lore, this big, and showing about how they looked and how they acted and how fierce they were. Yeah, some of them were, and even Blackbeard did the whole thing with the fuses in his hair or whatever to make him look more menacing. But a lot of that really is just Hollywood, right? I mean, there's so much of that was created by Hollywood to give them this persona that they were larger than life, when in fact they were a group of people from all different countries and backgrounds, and all come together to live by, like you said, have their allegiance be to the sea, right?
Yeah, a lot of them would choose whatever side just won. A lot of the crews of the ships that Lafitte would take just joined him.
That's fantastic.
A lot of that is Hollywood, but a lot of people forget just how intelligent they were. A lot of them were very well educated, skilled map makers, skilled navigationalists.
Right.
Blackbeard was very well educated. Lafitte is often referred to as the Merchant Prince. He was very charming and charismatic, able to kind of sneakily squirm his way into the highest social circles, able to command the attention of presidents. He was not a low-life, down on his luck pirate that has to resort to taking all these ships. He took ships because opportunity was there, not because he needed that necessarily.
Right. Yep.
And a lot of Lafitte, is just conjecture.
And you had actually mentioned in the show that sometimes these guys had amassed so much wealth And they
Uh-huh.
didn't have anywhere to spend it. So,
Hmm.
again, you would think about the fact that, I mean, yeah, it's nice to have a chest full of gold or whatever, but I mean, they had so much. What the heck are you going to do with all this? Because they really, like you said, they didn't have
We
anywhere to spend it. So, what do you do with it all?
Yeah, there's a really cool article from Christmas of 1816, and we talk about it in the film, but it
Mm-hmm.
was written by um, a an American that was on the Mina expeditions. And what the Mina expeditions were uh, was essentially a spying operation on Mexican ports.
Mm-hmm.
And Lafitte was a part of this
Oh,
with
wow.
Javier Mina. And it was when Mexico was revolting, and Spain essentially wanted to keep tab on the port cities.
Mm-hmm.
And they did this. They amassed quite a bit of wealth, attacking a few ships during this. And there's an article that talks about, plain as day, on one of these ships involved in the Mina expedition, we've got $200,000 in silver doubloons, but they haven't paid any of these men yet. And there's a few records like that
Mm-hmm.
scattered throughout Lafitte's life, where there's treasure on the island, and there's no,
Hmm.
I guess, resolving article. There's no
Hmm.
article that says this is exactly where it went.
Right.
There's also records out there. I'm not incredibly well versed in these, but I know a few historians that are. But there are records out there that talk about exactly how much he had in this certain chest on this day, when they're keeping account of it. And they say, in this month of this year, we know he had exactly this much in his
Wow. Yeah.
personal stockpile. And of course, he had quite a bit that was lost in that hurricane.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah. Yep.
People associate him with treasure and just bringing off ingots from these ships. And Spain did occasionally have treasure ships and merchant ships that were carrying quite a bit of coinage come through.
Mm-hmm.
But the majority of his wealth did come from the selling of those ships, the selling of slaves.
Right. Right. Yep.
And he had a lot of it. What is he going to do with a lot of money in a state that has currently a pirate colony,
Mm-hmm.
a multitude of native villages, and then had two Spanish forts?
Right. Yep.
There was San Antonio and then Nacogdoches.
Uh,
Where is he going to spend money other than traveling to various ports to spend money?
right.
They
Yep.
brought in a lot from the island of Galveston, and where all that went, we aren't necessarily sure. They weren't great accountants. Um, it's all conjecture, and it leads to stories. One of my favorite facts is it has to do more with shipwrecks, but it's about just the amount of wealth that's out there.
Right.
But about 10% of all of the Spanish colonial wealth that they had in the New World, it's unaccounted for. The
Really.
majority of that was lost in shipwrecks. Spain just assumed that about 10% of its ships would go down in storms.
Wow.
And Florida, Texas, the Caribbean, all littered with Spanish shipwrecks that are just out there asking to be recovered.
Right.
Uh, Usually very difficult to recover anything, but
It's amazing.
that's what treasure hunters are for.
Yeah, exactly. You're exactly right, and we wish you really well on that. I hope that looking forward to this documentary. I hope that you'll stay part of the group and that you'll let us know as this goes along, because we'd love to get more information about it when you can after it's released and stuff. It's fascinating, and like I said, I just love the history, and I know so many of our members do too. Just want to know more about it. So wish you well on that. That's just fascinating stuff. It really is. And, so many of us would love to be part of it. I know I would. I'd love to get out there and do what you're doing, as a young man. I'm an old guy now, so it's kind of late for me, but, it's like the Laginas, they have now, in their later part of their lives, they'll say, that they have the opportunity to, and of course the financial support that they have, and the money that they've made in the oil and gas industry and stuff, or at least Marty has, but being able to do that now at that point in their life, you're a young man. I mean, you've got years ahead of you to continue doing something that you're so passionate about, and I envy you for that. That's awesome, and I hope to see a lot more from you, and that you that you are able to, you're successful, that this documentary comes off well, and that it's very successful. We're looking forward to that. And Jennifer was just asking about the documentary. Do you have a distributor for the documentary? Do you have somebody that's going to help you put it out?
So we were going to do a film festival run in the spring, and then likely premiere through Amazon Prime.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, as far as trying to get a distributor, we have not. We've looked into it, but we're likely just going to independently put it out on our own and just let people
That's
view
great.
it, enjoy it. I think our main goal with this is just to tell the crazy story of Hendrix Lake and then repackage it in a new way and get it out there and inspire some people. I think the main thing that I've learned in doing it, other than that stories are just very powerful, is that no matter how small of a role you play in a story, you're still part of that story.
That's really cool.
You're one with the story, and I think that's an important distinction to make. Not that I mean, a lot of people will say to me, I've only looked into a small treasure in my hometown. How do I get into these big ones? And I'm like, man, it's the small stories that get people interested in the big ones.
Yep,
it's
exactly.
The Facebook groups like this that follow Oak Island, that end up inspiring someone else to search for treasure. And it's like, if Calvin would not have told me just in passing that he was interested in a pirate story in Texas, none of this would have happened. This first episode of Beyond Oak Island wouldn't have happened.
Right.
At least in the way that it did.
Right.
And it's important to carry on stories, no matter what role you play, if it's incredibly small or if you are just going full speed ahead and actually searching for it yourself.
Yep. I agree with you 100%. That's really cool. And like you said, inspiring the younger ones to younger kids, like you did when you were 7 years old, to do that. And I remember reading that with Marty and Rick talked about reading that Reader's Digest article, and I remember that too as a kid. I'm about the same age as Marty, real close to Marty's age, and I remember that article too. And I don't remember just what year I read it or whatever, but I do remember that because my mom and dad used to get the Reader's Digest, and so I saw that. And that kind of, obviously as a kid, you're thinking, oh, pirate treasure, awesome. And then the stories, Treasure Island and all that kind of stuff. So, but you're absolutely right. And that even that little part you can play will lead into something else, hopefully in your life, and you can carry that on. A lot of people are thanking you very much. What I'd like to do, because this is our Oak Island night too, is that I'd like to jump over and dive into a little bit of Oak Island talk, and you're welcome to stay. I'd love to have you stay if you want. We're gonna jump over to that here in just a minute. But I really thank you so much for coming on and sharing this with you, and we wish you so much the best for your documentary. And I'd like to have you come back at some point and share some more with us as you can. Fascinating stuff, and that's what's so neat about talking to you about this, and some of the other guests that we've had on, is that you're so passionate about what you're doing, and that passion is what drives you, and it comes out, and you're so very articulate in getting this information out. But it's that passion that we feel from you, and that it makes us more interested in the story, because you've done so much work, and just like I said, your passion on it is fantastic. And I can't thank you enough for coming on and being with us here tonight and sharing this. And everybody's doing the same thing. All the members are coming on saying thank you so much. And this is recorded, and it stays on Facebook forever, until someday we decide to take it down. But you can come back at some point, and I will too, and read. So far we're up to 125 different comments, and people are asking questions in there that, quite honestly, I missed because they flew
Wonderful.
by.
I'll go back and answer this.
Yeah, exactly. You can go back and look at what people have asked and answer it later on, and that's something that our guests do sometimes, and that's fantastic. It gives you a little bit more connection. You are part of the group, and
cool.
You can do that for sure. Would you like to hang around with us for a little bit as we talk about Oak Island? You're welcome to.
I'm going to grab some food, but I'll give my ending little speech. Right. So if people would like to learn more about the documentary, you can go to sunkensilver.com. We're just a 4-person crew, and there are places where you can read a little bit about the legend, read a little bit about where it's going, see the backstory to it, and see kind of what we want to do with the documentary. There's a little bit of a teaser. It was made in January where we had barely any footage. We can get a slight taste. We should have a full trailer done very soon. And you can also go to hendrixlake.com. The good thing about working with Gary is that we had kind of a monopoly on searches for Hendrix Lake at the time of the show. So a lot of people were directed to our site and to hendrixlake.com. You can read all about the history and see where to get your hands on Gary's book. It's a wonderful book. If you like kind of the backstory about some of these treasure legends and the guys that build their own metal detectors and decide to search for treasure. That's the fun part about Hendrix Lake. It's not Laginas. It's not multimillionaires and these huge pieces of equipment coming out to the lake. It's the guy from the town over that's an electrician. So he decides to build his own metal detector and search for pirate treasure, and he becomes the main character in this story.
Yep.
So it's a wonderful backstory. You can find a lot on sunkensilver.com or hendrixlake.com. But I really appreciate coming on, and I'll try to answer whatever questions I missed.
All right. I did put up sunkensilver.com, so I linked it on the chat here. And is Hendrix, or how do you spell Hendrix?
Hendricks.
CKS. Hendrixlake.com.
Yeah.
Okay, I just linked that as well. For our members, and then like I said, there it goes. Oh yeah, it just popped up. It's got the little picture of the wagons being dumped into the lake as it came up there. So good, that's fantastic. We'd love to see it. And again, I thank you so much, and our members thank you so much for coming on tonight. And I really hope that you had a good time and that you'd like to come back someday and talk some more. If you have another thing that you're looking into, whether it's talking about LaFitte or not, man, we'd love to hear about it. And like I said, it's your passion that's so overwhelming, and coming on and talking about this stuff that we love so much, and just hearing this history. So again, thank you so much. I appreciate it, Christian. And like I said, feel free to go out and check out the chat anytime you'd like. I really appreciate your coming on tonight. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, have a good night. All right, so let's see here. Now we got to switch this around a little bit. Let's see if I can do this without making too many mistakes. Let's see. I'm going to switch over to main here. Whoops. No, that didn't work out, did it? All right, let's see. Let's see. Main. Yeah, well, let's see if I can get this fixed. I'm looking at the wrong screen here. There we go. Now you get to look at my background screen there. All right, so yep. Well, apparently this is not going to work, so I'm going to have to do it like this. I'm still messing with this technology. Sorry about that, folks. So I wanted to talk a little bit, if we could, about Oak Island, as I just cycled you through a bunch of pictures you didn't really care to look at. There we go. So I'd like to talk a little bit about Oak Island and Season 8, Episode 5. Really interesting stuff there that came up on the show that I thought was fascinating. Hopefully you did too. And I know we had initially the show started off with talking about Lot 11. Now they got over to Lot 11, and this came through our information with Corian Mull and Christopher Morford giving us information about the pentagram and marking out two spots on the island. One was on the west side of the swamp over in Lot 11, and another one was over on the other side of the swamp. I'm trying to remember exactly which lot that was. I know that Linda knows which one that was. Let's see here. I'm getting that back up. Here we go. so I can see the chat going by here. There we go. Uh, yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I really did. I had to get that switched over, and I really I had things all. I thought I had things all set up for tonight, and it turns out I muffled it, so I messed it up. Didn't get it right. So anyway, so they got over there and they were looking in lot 11 on the western edge of the swamp, and it looks like they found another stone paved area. I mean, they dug down in there. They got the water out of that trench, and they found like a stone trench. And as Dr. Spooner went down in there, he found an area that looked like a bunch of rocks, and he attributed it to the paved area. So that I thought that was pretty interesting. What did you guys think about that? So that and so some sort of like a stone trench. So, we'll have to see more about that. And they stopped their digging. Once they found the rocks and stuff, they said, well, okay, this is going to take further investigation. But it definitely hit a particular spot that Corey and Chris were talking about. Now, you go over to the other side of the island, in the other spot, and they were digging down in that hole we saw in the previous episode. They were digging down in that hole, and they come up with some rocks. And, of course, that's the one where they hit the one big rock, and they were trying to pull it up, and it blew the hydraulic line on the backhoe, and that made a mess there, and so they had to stop. So we're going to get more information about that. I thought it was very interesting that after that they jumped into the another theorist coming on the island, or not, actually wasn't on the island. They were in probably a Zoom meeting there, but it was Aaron Helton came on, and Aaron is a geographic information systems analyst, geographic information systems, or GIS analyst. And wow, I was impressed. I was so impressed with, again, somebody that has a passion for what they do, and very well spoken, very well educated, coming on and giving us more information. Because sometimes you see the theorist coming on and you're like, okay, what's this theorist going to have? It's going to be very interesting or whatever. Erin, and she, I know she's joined our group, and love to have her on the show sometime, and hopefully that may happen someday down the road. We hope, maybe not. But Erin, I'm so impressed with your presentation coming out there. I gotta say, and you had with you Judy Rudabush. And she was able to talk a little bit about some of the things that went on there. Yeah, and I see Wanda saying she nailed it. Yeah, absolutely. And then Xena, yeah, working and talking about Xena's map. Now, I guess Judy was an assistant working with Xena Halpern, and working with that map. And then here comes this map once again. And yeah, Jennifer, exactly. Talking about Xena's map there. So I was so impressed by this map. Again, talking about it being, drawn up in supposedly in what 1347. This particular map. Yeah, Tom says she uses science, and that's for sure, and absolutely, putting the science to it like she did. And I had these wonderful pictures, and I wanted to bring them up and show you guys some of these pictures. I don't know that I might try to do it real quick, and I know I hate jumping around and giving you all these weird background pictures that you have to look at, but I had some pictures that I had brought up where she was talking about, she had called it, I think it was rock, a point at 20A was on the east side of the island, over by the point, or the snout of the little baby elephant, if we want to call it that. And then another rock over on the other side by the causeway, 21A, I believe that was, and how there was the line between them. If you put a line between the two, a straight line, it was only off by exact east and west by just a fraction. I forget what she said, but she said it was only off by a fraction. Okay, so you take those two, and then there was 6A that was up on the northeast side of the island. And she was lining up these rocks and these boulders out there, and they were called different markers. I guess they were set up as markers. But then they come up with the on Xena's map. They had the markers that were the anchors, that they were called the anchors. And it showed it. And I had a picture for that. I'm going to see if I can bring that up real quick. I bear with me, folks. I apologize. Let's see. Wish you could look at what Rick. Let's see. I'm looking at some of the. Yeah, Xena, rest in peace, man. She was a fountain of information, was she not? That was so fascinating. Some of the stuff about Xena. Let's see here. I want to see if I can bring these pictures up because I had some really nice pictures available. Let's see, Aaron. I have a folder here that I created. Let's see here. I'm going to try this, folks. Bear with me a moment while I try to see if I can bring these up because these are really fascinating pictures. Let's see. I'm going to try. Bear with me just a moment while I get these here. And directory. Okay, so look at that. Now you can see the map, but you can't see me. I don't know why my webcam is not showing up on here, but that's okay because at least you can see the picture. Yeah, I'm not sure why I'm not showing up now all of a sudden. Let's see, maybe I can get that worked out. But anyway, here is the map of Xena's map, and you see the picture there of the two anchors. And these are the, I think she numbered them 6A. I've got another picture here. We'll jump over to it. Let's see. Oops, not that one. There we go. Okay, so this is 20A showing here. 20A being the one that was over on the, whoops. Oh, boy. There we go. All right, so there's 20A, and that's the one over by the point or the snout of the elephant on that side of the island. And then she came across and said, now here's 21A over by the causeway. Now that line going between them, this line right here, was almost exactly east-west. Okay, now she picked out another boulder that's up here she's calling 6A, and I guess she numbered these by according to the lot, I guess, that they were in, but you got 6A. And then, let's see, this was looking at, this one here is 15A coming down from Nolan's Cross, a straight line down from Nolan's Cross. Now this is, 15A is supposed to be one of the markers of the, anchors. One of the anchors that are marked on Xena's map. Okay, so 15A is one of them. And here's the other one up here on the north side of the island. And I think she was calling that I forgot the number on that one now for the moment. But this is another one here. These are your north and your west anchors that are on the map, according to what Aaron came up with. And then, so you got the east drilled rock, and then 15A. There's another boulder down here on the bottom that's 16A, and then there's another one over in the Money Pit area that's 18A. And by using the technology, the GIS technology that our analyst, she working this stuff, she was able to triangulate using these a spot in the Money Pit that she says is the location, according to her research, of the actual Money Pit. Now, there was even more brought up that there was a, somebody's going to have to help me with this. There was a, let's see here. Yeah, see, just reading some of the chat here. Sorry. Yeah, so Jennifer was asking, wonder if it was by a degree. It might explain the difference in the alignments versus Versailles. Oh, okay. I'm not. But anyway, this was marked, and then they said that where they think they have narrowed down exactly where the money pit is. This would be Steve Guptill and Marty and all of them and Rick, and they've narrowed down exactly where they think the money pit is. And I forget the number they gave to that particular spot, but it is like just a few feet away, like 5 feet away from where she is saying, based upon her research. Now that's fascinating to me. That's really, really fascinating. I find that, so, and you look at these theories like this that come along and you're like, wait a minute, should we just dismiss it? Or should we at least give it a look? Like Christian and Corian, Chris Morford and Corian, you have to look at these spots. You have to at least go out and give it a look and see if that's exactly, if there's something there or not. I mean, you just dismiss it. They don't know what they're talking about. We're not going to go look. Absolutely, you got to go look. In my opinion, you have to go take a look at it. So she's come up with this and saying that they are almost spot on to her research of where the money pit is. The actual the vault or the money pit in the money pit area up there. Fascinating. And I think Aaron, like I said, you obviously put a lot of time into this and a lot of research into this. You're very passionate about it. I think you might have something here. It looks like you nailed it, and that's what some of our RF1. Thank you, Jan. Yeah, RF1 was the spot where they said it was, and I think they said it was like 5 feet away from where she is saying. That's nailing it pretty doggone close, I think. Wanda says X marks the spot. You bet. I'm just reading. Tom said the fact that the anchors are all over the island suggests that they have been used more than one location to secure items. You could be absolutely right with that, Tom. Because you look at like 6A, which was way up on the northeastern or western side of the island, and that's where she was using for making that circle. I mean, wow, how fascinating to have all these different markers. But like you said, they could have been used to mark out different spots on the island for different things. You're exactly right. Good point. Yeah, Don Brent says then the vault may have moved also. You're right. It could have. Linda, thank you, Linda. 3 inch or 3 foot from the borehole RF1, like Jan was saying. Thank you. 3 feet. I mean, that's pretty daggone close, and it's very interesting that's out there. So I was pretty fascinated by Aaron's presentation. Wasn't sure what to make of it when we saw it on the promo from last week, but I thought it was pretty spot on. I mean, she seemed to have all of her details, and I thought she did a great job, Aaron. So, I really impressed. And Jennifer says, what's the point of asking about theories if you're not going to check it out? Love seeing what they find. I couldn't agree with you more, Jennifer. That's exactly right. You have to look into those theories because, I mean, if somebody said, oh, aliens came and, we're using the island. Okay, maybe that one you might not want to follow up on. Yeah, if it seems, even if it's a little off, you got to check it out. You have to, because you just don't know for sure. And people spend a lot of time coming up with this research and looking into these things. Like Corian and Chris have done spent so much time, nailing all these things down. It's incredible, and you have to at least check it out because it has validity. I mean, look at what's being found. Those 2 spots, lot 11, and on the other side, over in Tom Nolan's property on the other side where they were digging, there's something was happening over there. They don't know for sure just yet, or we don't know yet anyway, because obviously 5 episodes into the season, we haven't seen what it is yet. But pretty interesting. And Jack, I'm so sorry that things worked out the way they did tonight and couldn't have you on. I miss having you out here. I really do. But the whole island come into play. You're exactly right. Um, Jennifer says, I would be okay with ancient aliens coming to the island. You know, did you see the episode? I do like that show, by the way, Ancient Aliens. I know we're not here to talk about Ancient Aliens tonight, but I do like that show. Uh, and and Marty was out there with them last week. Marty was out there with them, looking at the whole keyhole. They were talking about the keyholes and stuff. Um, yeah. Don agrees with Jennifer. That's what he was thinking. Let's see, Tom. If it's there, I don't think there's any doubt the vault has been moved or moved by drilling. I agree with you. You know, they were talking about when they put the one caisson down, H8, I think it was, and they figured they hit it and pushed it. And if that vault is sitting in an open cavity down there, it would be able to be moved around, especially being flooded with water. So hopefully they'll get that. We'll find out more about that in coming episodes. And I will try to get myself back on here. Let's see if I can do that. Nope, I got the wrong one there. Let's see. There we go. All right, folks, I'm back on here. So anyway, I'm about ready to wrap this up. If you have any questions, throw them out there. We can talk about it for a couple of minutes. But and I apologize for the technical issues. I will get this figured out as we go along here and make it a better show. I hope you don't mind that. But I love being able to come on here and share this information with you guys and talk about it, because that's what this is all about. So we can enjoy discussing this show and also beyond Oak Island, and having Christian on tonight. What an interesting man he is, and the work he's done, just fascinating. I was really, really, really happy that he was willing to come on with us. Let's see. Oh, great show. Thank you, Pat. I appreciate that very, very much. Let's see. Thanks, Don. I do appreciate it very much. I just love doing this. And Jennifer, thank you. Okay. I was just reading what you said here. Love the different perspective. What's in the books tends to be what people want you to think. I like seeing people analyzing themselves. Yeah, absolutely. And he was great. I really enjoyed it, and I want to be able to get more. Yes. Oh, thank you, Jack, for bringing that up. Jan Anderson put out the synopsis from the episode for the site. Thank you so much, Jan. We really, really appreciate you taking up that task, and it is well appreciated and well done. Thank you very much. Sharon says, I'd like to learn more about the anchors. Hopefully we will, because I believe Erin's on again next week, on next week's show. I think I saw in the preview that she's on again. So hopefully we'll be able to find out more about all of that that she did, that she had to say about that. So that's going to be a very interesting show for sure. So I guess I'm going to wrap it up. And like I said, folks, I'm going to work on this technology. I'll get this worked out a little bit better. And I really got to hand it for Christian for being so willing to work with me tonight. He was out doing a shoot today, and he texted me and said, he was running on his way back to the house. He had to, try to get things ready to be on tonight. He did get on a little bit late, and then I was fumbling around with the program and everything to use. But we will get this figured out, and then you won't have to look at this box next to me right here that's got the, no one else is here yet. Yeah. Sorry about that. We'll get this all figured out. But so much thanks to Jack. Jack did a bunch of research on Christian for me, and he loves doing that research, and I really appreciate Jack very much for that. And Linda, as always, I thank you so much for what you do. You basically run this whole group here. I'm just the face that pops on here once a week and talks about things, but really, really appreciate you people and Jan so very, very much, and all you folks that are watching and members of our group. We're up to 160 people now, and that's great. I mean, but it doesn't matter about the size of the group. It matters about the quality of the group, and we have people that are so active in the group and sharing ideas and chatting and putting up posts and different things like that. That's what makes this so fun and so interesting to share this stuff. And I'm so glad you guys are active in it. So I don't care if we have, 50,000 people. Quite honestly, I really don't want to get that big, because you kind of lose the ability to be able to stay in touch with everybody that's sharing on the post and in the group. And I still throw this out, and I've got some people that I know I've talked to in the group that might be looking at coming on with me as a special guest co-host. Jack is going to be on with me like almost every week. But unfortunately, we had a little technical difficulty with him tonight. We're going to get that fixed, and Jack will be back. Maybe we'll get him on camera sometime too, but we'll get that worked out. But anyway, thank you all so much for being here and watching, and thank you all so much for making this group what it is. Really, really appreciate you all, and all the people that helped to put this all together. Thank you so much for being here. And don't forget, next week, and I'm going to go ahead and throw it out here now, Aaron Taylor. He's one of the new archaeologists working on the island. He was working with David McGinnis and Laird popping in every now and then. I think they have some students, and I've forgotten some of their names, but some of the students that are coming out working on the island. We are going to have Aaron. He's agreed to come on. I don't know what all he can talk about, and he's going to talk about things not just Oak Island related, but other things that are going on. Really looking forward to that. And again, that's going to be next week tonight, on the 7 o'clock show, next Wednesday night, and Aaron Taylor will be coming on. Really looking forward to that. And we're working on lining up some other people. We're going to probably take a break on guest and then hop over the holidays, and then we're going to get right back into it. I was talking with Vanessa Lucido again from Rock Equipment Company. She's wanting to come back on, and I can't wait for that. And again, we talked to Laird a little bit about coming back on. We're working on it, and we're hoping to get some good content for everybody and more information. So thank you so much again for everybody being here tonight, and hope you enjoyed it. Have a good night.